Chiefs game doesn't matter, but it is going to for the young players. Let's talk about it.
This is KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
Not be a more live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC. I am here with my beautiful friends, Craig Stout and Maddie Lane. The whole gang is here together. It is exciting to be back in our usual time, all that good stuff. Matthew, hi.
Hello. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome, buddy. It's been a long time since I've got to see you since, we recorded this last show in the middle of the day. Oh, Craig's here. Welcome back, Craig. How are you? We missed you, buddy.
Holy cow, I don't have this kind of energy. I don't know what happened. I haven't listened to the Monday show yet. I haven't had time.
You weren't gonna.
And I might have.
Whoa. He's not you.
That's true. No, I'm doing great. Very, very happy that the Chiefs are not sounding like they're not going to risk anybody, with injury or anything like that. We get to get a look at some backups, some of the depth players. This is actually going to be a pretty fun week to cover the Chiefs this week.
Well, it definitely is, because obviously the Chiefs are going to rest some of their key players in this game and getting in preparation for the playoffs. The hay's kind of in the barn. That's kind of what we've established, right? This team is what they are. We're not going to get another look at this version until it's do or die. And me and Maddie had the conversation about, kind of going back and forth, like good idea, bad idea. I was more pro sit 'em. Maddie, maybe a few more hesitations. Craig, where do you kind of sit on whether or not this team should be sitting starters? What do you think?
I mean, on defense, they definitely got to sit starters. There's nothing more you got to prove over there. Let the young guys get some reps.
Start a little faster.
Well, listen. Don't. The starters could sit, as far as I'm concerned, on the defensive side. I get the whole idea of trying to build some chemistry, trying to get into a rhythm, but Patrick Mahomes isn't playing, then none of them should play. Like, at this point, give the young guys reps. Guys like Wanya Morris make a lot of sense. We're going to get into a lot of this, as it goes a little further, but it doesn't serve Joe Tooney, Creed Humphrey, even really Travis Kelce, even though he's 16 yards away from 1,000 yards. It doesn't really serve any of those guys any good. You put a little bit more risk on guys getting hurt. Just get to the playoffs. That's what matters right now.
I'm not going to make an argument pitch for them. They should play people now that they've already announced that they are not going to. That feels like a
you should
useless,
rail against it.
That feels like a useless argument to be made. We're going down a side path here. Chiefs made a big move, signed Isaiah Buggs to their practice squad. That's that depth defensive tackle. Legitimately, kind of poking fun. I think that's a very good signing. I'm sitting here looking at the Chiefs roster, and they still have yet to get a defensive tackle besides Derek Nottie that is good versus anchoring versus the run, right? Chris Jones makes plays versus the run, but he's not an anchor against it. It's kind of Derek Nottie who's very up and down in that role. And then Mike Pennell's come back and been pretty good in that role. He got time over, Neil Farrell, who's been on the roster. They kind of seem to cycle out of Matt Dickerson to bring in Pennell, and he's the guy getting the run now. And I think he's been better in that role than him. I'm just intrigued to see once the playoffs actually get here, if Buggs plays any kind of role. He's been a quality run-stuffing defensive tackle in the NFL for the Steelers, for the Lions. He played a big part in kind of turning that culture over for Dan Campbell with Detroit last year, when they were first getting in there. So it's a nice little signing to add depth. I assume he'll get a fair amount of call-ups come playoff time. At least that's just kind of my assumption right now. But there was some current news that we could probably touch on there with Buggs being added to this practice squad.
Yeah, 6'3", 335, played a little nose, played some defensive tackle, was a healthy scratch to kind of start the year for Detroit. Aleem McNeil has been kind of the guy for them in the middle of that defense, and he's good. He's a good football player. So when Aleem McNeil went on IR, you got to see Buggs rotate in a little bit more. And, he's been fine to good. He's been what he is, really. Comes in, has a couple of tackles for loss, ends up with a sack, couple of QB hits. Nothing really major, but for a guy of his build and the way that he plays, that's good enough. Ali McNeil comes back off of IR, and they're looking at a little bit of a roster crunch. They go ahead and decide that they're going to waive Isaiah Buggs this week. Dan Campbell talked about how rough of a decision that was, that they really appreciated him. They really loved him. Isaiah Buggs really loved it in Detroit. I think that there was nothing but positives that were coming out of that. It was just one of those roster crunch situations. And with as much as the Chiefs have rotated their defensive tackles this year and not giving guys some opportunities and giving other guys opportunities, you might as well go out and get a guy that, go out and see what you got. Get an extended trial to see if you want him on the roster next year.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think he'll be one of the call-ups this week, but it might be worth kind of just seeing, how he integrates into this defense over the course of the next week or next month or so, depending on how long the Chiefs are playing. But it gives them a leg up on signing him to a futures contract. And I think that's the thing that could be most appealing here is you're getting a leg up on him for 2024. For next year, just giving him an opportunity to maybe, break this roster. It's such a niche position, right? Like it's such a, it's a very niche role and there's not a ton of guys available for it. And teams aren't rostering as many as they have in the past. And so that's where, a guy like Isaiah Buggs could potentially fit into this roster. But I'd be kind of surprised if we see him get called up personally before the end of the year. But I mean, crazier things have happened, I guess.
And then it's probably protecting yourself a little bit too. Like we said, if Derek Nottie gets hurt, they don't have another nose tackle besides Neil Farrell, who they have kind of done everything they can to not play this year. Or then it becomes a Mike Pennell or bringing Matt Dickerson back up, who's back on the practice squad. So I think it gives them another option to protect themselves in case of injury. I wouldn't be surprised to see them maybe pull up a Buggs or a Dickerson or Pennell or like two of them in the playoffs just to increase that defensive tackle rotation, especially when you look at some of the matchups like the Browns or like the Ravens going forward that might try to run the ball on them a little bit more. So I think they're just kind of protecting themselves this year. It's mostly probably to get an early look at him, try to sign him in the future, in which, hey, I would rather see Isaiah Buggs play snaps over Neil Farrell next year. I mean, like, I just, based on what they've done in the NFL, he's a better player. So, like, if they can get him on under the team next year on the roster, I think he would probably start out ahead of Neil Farrell, who has just really struggled to find his way into playing time this year. So good move either way all around. I know every time a defensive tackle has been released or cut this year, everyone's kind of been like, the Chiefs would be an interesting fit for that guy. The Chiefs would be an interesting fit for that guy. And here they just kind of slide Isaiah Buggs in without really anyone paying attention because no one's paying attention this week, I guess. And it's a nice move. I think it's a good little move.
Yeah. And on top of that, he's a guy that's played in a bunch of different schemes, not, basic schemes either. He played at Bama for his final 2 years of college, had 13.5 tackles for loss that last year. He was actually pretty well regarded coming out, goes to Pittsburgh, plays over there for 3 years, rotating in as a defensive tackle or a nose tackle. Goes to Detroit, plays in a completely different scheme again. Like he has picked it up wherever he's gone, and he has earned playing time wherever he's gone. So, I know there's a lot of people that are looking at this going, well, Neil Farrell's not really getting on the field. They're calling up all these other guys underneath him. Buggs is one of those guys that I do feel like can pick it up a little bit quicker than maybe some other guys just because he has played in so many schemes at a very, very high football level. So I think we will see him in the playoffs. I don't think that this is just a token. We're going to see him in practice throughout the rest of the year.
All right, let's talk about the last game before those playoffs. Chiefs-Chargers time.
I thought we were recapping the Bengals game again.
I mean, we can if you want.
It was fun.
I had fun. It was, I feel I continue.
It was more fun than others, sure.
I feel better. Yeah, look, we can't take wins for granted here in Kansas City anymore because the Chiefs have lost a lot of football games this year, way more than we're accustomed to. I'm kind of like, this is always a fun game. I think, we're normally used to this kind of game when the Chiefs have nothing to play for in a positive way. Right now, the Chiefs are locked into the 3 seed, and that is still something to be positive about. It's just not a bye-week lock. It's not, nothing like that. It's still a chance to see a lot of young guys at the bottom of this roster that we're all looking forward to. We're a bunch of draft nerds. Season's underway for us right now with the 2024 draft coming up. We're in draft mode, behind the scenes a little bit. But the 2023 class, there's some draft prospects here. There's also just some young players we've liked over the last couple of years that are probably going to get an opportunity to play. So let's start with, some guys on the offensive side of the football. It's going to be fascinating to see the receivers and the receiver situation for this game. Because, it's a lot of guys that we've looked at and said, maybe, like a Justin Ross and a McCole Hardman, who we know who McCole Hardman is, but we can start with Ross. Everybody's like really excited to see a bigger sample size of Justin Ross. Like that is what, we're seeing comments in the comments here. Flapjack City saying, I need Ross to get 100% of the snaps. People are like, that's the one that people are going to get most excited about. It'll be fascinating. I'm just mostly curious to see, like, is he relegated to an X? Is he just going to be, are they going to move him around a little bit? Is this a chance to move him around a little bit? See what he can do, in a variety of different spots. Like, I'm just very interested in his usage for this game.
Blaine Gabbert didn't help the hype train this week when he got up on the podium and said that, the amount of athletic ability that he, referring to Justin Ross, has is extremely rare. He's been around the game for a long time, and seeing what he can do, it's fun to watch. Blaine Gabbert sure knows what the Chiefs fans want to hear heading into this game. I'll tell you that much right now. It'll be interesting. I think we got to see a little bit more of Ross leading up to, his time on the exempt list. He was getting a few more reps and he was getting some targets, and he had a couple drops in those games, but he was getting open. So I think there's a little bit of hope that people are kind of holding on to. I'm entirely fence sitting on the Justin Ross hype wagon right now. I just don't know what to quite expect yet. For what I see, he's still going to be at his best catching contested passes, and the Chiefs just don't want to throw those. Like, they really, really don't want to throw those. They've even gotten to the point where they'll get him in the red zone. They got an isolated one-on-one look from a pretty tight split to run a fade, and it was turned down immediately to go to the backside, which nothing was open. It's just, that was the look you wanted for that guy. If they are going to trust him in that role at any point in time, you would have expected it to kind of be there. They turned it down. So I am intrigued to see how he gets used now when there's not going to be so many guys ahead of him, but I'm kind of waiting to see what it looks like. I don't know if this team uses a receiver with his strengths very well.
Oh, we had a technical glitch there. Are you good, Craig?
Oh, I am good now. I apologize for that. I'm curious to see what sorts of things we see from him. Obviously, Blaine Gabbert coming out, speaking that highly of him. Blaine Gabbert played with him plenty in the preseason. Like, this isn't one of those guys that is just like, I've just been throwing him the ball in practice and we'll see. He was one of the reasons that the hype train was maybe going off the rails a little bit during training camp and preseason, because it wasn't just because, Justin Ross is getting a little bit of run with the ones. Most of the damage that he was doing was with guys like Shane Buechele or, Blaine Gabbert throwing him the ball later in the game. So it's not one of those things that he's unfamiliar throwing the ball to Justin Ross. It just remains to be seen what the plan is. He is rotating in a little bit with the Chiefs offense. It would be very difficult for him not to. The bar is very low at wide receiver right now, but get him out there, get him a little more comfortable, figure out if he's a little bit more of a gamer. If he's a guy that needs to get into things a little bit more, needs to run, 6 or 7 routes, have a couple of targets, and then all of a sudden, hey, this is clicking for me. It's slowing down a little bit. The nerves, I've been able to shake some of this off. It remains to be seen if he's a guy like that, because we haven't seen enough snaps with the offense right now. If he comes out, gets a bunch of targets from Blaine Gabbert, starts to grow into the game, it's one of the few guys that I think could be on the upswing going into the playoffs if he puts on another good performance here. Now, it's not like the Chargers are going to have an elite defense out there. Far from it right now. They are terrible on the defensive side of the ball, which is even more reason to try and feed him some targets, find out what you got. Again, a lot of these guys are depth pieces that are getting more run. A lot of this evaluation is trying to figure out whether or not these individuals are worth being on the 53-man roster, and if you can make decisions, bottom of the roster decisions, coming up in the offseason here when you get to free agency. We have talked so much about this wide receiver room and how they just need a complete overhaul. If Justin Ross comes out there and has a good game, maybe he solidifies himself as one of the guys moving forward. If he goes out there, he looks completely lost, doesn't know what he's doing, he could also play his way off of a future roster there too. So this is one of those, it's time to put up or shut up moments. He's going to get plenty of reps. So I'm very curious to see how that shakes out.
Yeah, I don't think there's I think I'm with you. I think this is it's a good benchmarking game for him to kind of just get an understanding of like what he's capable of doing with higher volume. I think about the Vikings game, and he got to be utilized not only in the red zone, but in the middle of the field a little bit more too. Had a couple really nice plays, nice catches, even some routes that he ran. He kind of ran a diverse route tree, all things considered, despite being in a small sample size against the Vikings. So I just like to see more of that, right? Just what kind of routes he's running, where he gets the ball, where he wins, those kind of things. And yeah, I think it's a big opportunity for him. Probably the biggest opportunity of anybody on the offense, because there's the offensive side of the ball is not like there's a ton of rookies that are, we're going to see this week. We're really not going to get to see a ton of them. It's a pretty established group as far as veterans are concerned, but I'm sure we're going to get our eyes on a few different players outside of just Justin Ross. Maddie, who's someone on offense you're excited to watch?
There's so many. No, really though, McCole Hardman, it sounds like he's supposed to get some play in this, and it's not so much that I need to see him have a big game or anything, just getting him back in this offense, seeing if he is healthy, and seeing if the Chiefs, presumably without MVS playing, or at least getting a ton of reps. Like, I don't know what that's going to look like, but like, hopefully MVS, hopefully Justin Watson aren't getting a ton of run if playing at all. And without those guys out there, can McCole Hardman get some of the same look that those two guys get downfield? What does he look like when getting to run those downfield routes? If it ends up being Richie James, what does he look like getting to run some of those? I just want to see some other guys take MVS's, take Watson's reps in a game that, essentially doesn't matter, and let them run some of those same routes to see if they can get open. I don't really even care if Gabbert's hitting them, if they're connecting on them, like what the stat line is. I just want to see some other players run those routes, specifically McCole Hardman, and see what that threat of like real speed does. Because let me tell you, watching back, like we spent a lot of time talking about MVS this year and being a step back. I'm not certain he hasn't lost like a full step from what he was able to run in years past. Like, not only has he not been playing great, but like I genuinely think that he might be a solid step slower than what he used to be. So getting somebody that can actually run out there, it would be nice to see. And I do think if that's the case, if McCole Hardman is healthy, he could be not a weapon, not a secret weapon, but a little bit of an X factor for the Chiefs going into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's we have talked so much about the Chiefs' need for a vertical presence in this offense, and we got a small taste of it this past week against the Cincinnati Bengals. Seeing single high coverages, Rashee Rice recognizing that, hey, I am seeing this the same way as Patrick Mahomes. I'm going to audible this route, and I'm going to run it vertical because I know it's going to be there, and it was. Like, those are positives. That's exactly what needs to happen. We have spelled so much of Travis Kelce's, impending retirement. He looks 34. He looks terrible and all of that. They've also made it very easy to cover Travis Kelce right now because there's not a safety in the world that is terrified of the Chiefs' vertical passing game. So McCole Hardman getting a little more downfield, all of a sudden, that's 2 games in a row that maybe defensive coordinators look at that and go, have they been hiding this? Have they been intentionally kind of keeping some of this back a little bit in the hopes that we're not going to, play them in the way that's going to prevent explosive plays? Okay, maybe we need to back off a little bit. And all of a sudden, hey, Travis Kelce's a little more open. I am very curious to watch, speaking of a young player here, I'm very curious to watch Lucas Niang. We think that Lucas Niang is going to get some run here. I think both offensive tackles that started the year, that's Donovan Smith and Juwan Taylor, are probably getting a break this week in favor of Wanye Morris at left tackle and Lucas Niang at right tackle. The Chiefs might have themselves an offensive tackle problem going into next year. It's going to, we're going to see how some of this shakes out. Andy Reid may not like the way that Wanya Morris has kind of closed out this year. Donovan Smith is a free agent this year, and it's not like he's played, super lockdown at left tackle by any means. Lucas Niang factors in a way that the Chiefs want him to as a swing tackle. And he needs to show, basically that he is worth keeping on the roster in 2024. Really hasn't gotten very many reps out there with the team. If he goes out there and he plays well at right tackle, that's a guy that they may look at and go, okay, well, maybe we go out and we find, another left tackle that can get us through the season a little bit more. We can rely on Wanya Morris's development to try and take over that role again in this offseason. We'll make it a true competition, and we feel comfortable with Lucas Niang, and that's our tackle depth. And we know that now going into this. So I'm curious to see if he goes out there and again, very much like Justin Ross, if he goes out there and looks terrible, well, then there is an offensive tackle problem, and they will probably need to spend either free agent dollars or a high draft pick on a guy to try and solidify this, because Andy Reid's not going to mess around with those trenches again. So Lucas Niang's a guy that is going to play a lot, and I'm curious to see how he looks out there after not playing all year.
So that is, I'm curious about that as well. I think the Chiefs might have to add one of the call-ups that they use might have to be on the offensive line. So they might bring up an Austin Ryder. They might bring up a Darian Kennard. But, if they bring up Ryder.
Sleeping on our guy Godric.
Godric, I understand, but I mean, he's still pretty inexperienced, and I think they need an interior player. Like I wouldn't be stunned if the starting line for this game is Wanya, Allegretti, Ryder, Caliendo, Lucas Niang.
I feel like they got to bring up Kennard because you need a third tackle. Like they don't have a tackle.
Right, but they can only call up 2. So if you can bring in Ryder, you can start all 5 of those guys pretty easily.
But you have no backup tackle if someone gets hurt.
Well, I mean, not all of those guys will be inactive. They'll keep Jawan and they'll keep a couple of those guys available. Maybe. I think that's the move. One of the things I'm most fascinated with, though, when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, has to do with players that may not be playing. We're going to talk about that right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
So with all of the, talk about players missing this game or sitting out, there's a couple players that I'm fascinated in maybe sitting this out and it being a bad thing. This is the last dress rehearsal opportunity for Donovan Smith and potentially Kadarius Toney, who was a limited participant yesterday and was downgraded to a did not participate today. I think Donovan Smith as well was a did not participate today as well, if I'm correct.
After a full practice.
A full practice.
He went full to DNP, and that's not great.
So it's
surprising.
It is a little surprising because
you think so?
Well, here's the thing. I thought Donovan Smith might get a little bit of run this week if they were planning on bringing Donovan Smith back. Yeah, and Kadarius, we know he's just always injured. But I mean, I think I'm fascinated for 2 different reasons. First off, Donovan Smith, he's the veteran left tackle, was a full participant early in the week, goes to a DNP. We've kind of gone back and forth on whether they're going to want a veteran, over there at the left tackle position. But if they're going to make that call, I don't want Donovan Smith's first game back being the playoffs. I don't like that, So if maybe they're rolling with Wanya, I don't know. We can start with Donovan, but I'm a little bit. That's one of the things I'm paying attention to at the for the playoffs is who's going to start at left tackle. It kind of seems like they might be cornered into Wanya. Not that Wanya's been bad or Donovan's been any better, but there's a difference in the speed of the game. The experience matters a lot more. And Donovan Smith's a Super Bowl winning tackle. So he's seen it at the highest level. He knows what to expect. That's something I'm kind of curious about, especially if Donovan Smith doesn't practice again.
So we don't know if Donovan Smith's healthy or not, right? Like the fact that he was giving it a full go probably says that I don't want to speak for him, but like I have a hard time believing that Donovan Smith, given some of the injuries that he has played with the past couple years, couldn't gut out a performance if he absolutely had to, or if he was being asked to, based on how the practice reports have gone and the injuries that he has played with in his career. That being said, him getting this rest, not pushing for a game that no, he's not needed in, but like Kent said, would be a nice little bit of to knock the rust off before going into the playoffs, is leaning me towards that they are just going to ride Wanya Morris into the playoffs, and Donovan Smith's not getting that back unless there's an injury, or hey, maybe you're getting a performance similar to what you got versus the Raiders, where in that first half, especially where it's just game breakingly bad. And then maybe you just go to Donovan Smith in case of emergency, but it almost feels like he's kind of being relegated to that in case of emergency kind of role at the offensive tackle position. And good or bad, we're going to find out. I think we can make a case for Wanya Morris getting that nod to be the starter. I think you can make a case for Donovan Smith. They're clearly, I think, heading towards Wanya Morris. I think if Donovan Smith doesn't play in this game, there is a very, very, very low chance that he would get the nod over Morris come the wild card round of the playoffs without playing any reps since his injury.
It would be difficult, but not impossible. It wouldn't be the first time that we've seen them rotate a guy in late. And it's not like he didn't play at the start of the year. So, he knows what Andy Heck and Andy Reid want. And who knows, maybe that's closer to the offense that they're going to be running the playoffs. We'll see. Kadarius Toney is the one that really kind of catches me here, because Blaine Gabbert specifically mentioned, throwing to Justin Ross, throwing to McCole Hardman, and throwing to Kadarius Toney. Like, he mentioned those three guys by name, and that really kind of caught me, because I went, oh boy, like Kadarius Toney has been fragile like his entire career. We all know that. And, he's hurt a lot and he gets dinged up a lot. And this seems like the kind of game that you wouldn't want that individual playing in. But I think it also kind of speaks to how the Chiefs are viewing him right now. He needs reps. He needs to get out there and get in a rhythm again, because every time that they found him and tried to target him as of late, bad things have happened. So I fully believed that they were going to try and get Kadarius Toney on the field this week, give him a limited package of plays, have him catch a couple of passes, get out there, roll off a couple of hits, and then sit him down like they were at the beginning of the year to try and preserve him for the playoffs. This DNP that he had on Thursday has now kind of blown that out of the water. I don't think that they're going to chance it. I don't think that they're going to put a guy out there that they believe they can use, even if it's just for 4 or 5 plays in the playoffs that are designed specifically for him. They believe that he is game-breaking enough with the ball in his hand that he deserves those snaps. So I don't think they'll chance it, but I really was thinking, oh, wow, he's going to play this week, when Gabbert came out and mentioned him by name as one of the guys that he's comfortable throwing the ball to.
Sadly, I think that was the plan. And here we are, a DNP. You want to hear something interesting? Kadarius Toney has more receiving yards, touchdowns, and rushing yards in half a season last year than he did for this season in Kansas City.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think I said 3 weeks ago that he needed 2 more yards to hit last year. And again, he played half a season in Kansas City last year, 2 more yards. And I said, I would bet he doesn't get it. And he immediately popped up on the injury report. And now it's looking like he might not. Like, that is scary. That really is scary.
And so, like, I know, like, the Chiefs probably still believe him into some capacity. He contributed in that Super Bowl. He contributed in the playoffs for this team. He had the big punt return and the touchdown. The punt return Matty refuses to acknowledge. And it
happened. It just wasn't necessary.
It's just kind of funny to me. It is just kind of funny to me that there's been such a regression from him.
Which matters more.
It's just tough to watch. But I don't know what his outlook for the playoffs are, and if they really want to get him involved all that much. I wouldn't be stunned if they don't see him in the playoffs if he misses this week, because they haven't gained much out of him. I mean, his production is absolutely tanked. So
I mean, he does do for the offense, and like not in theory, like in practice. What does he do for the offense? He helps the defense by turning completions into interceptions. But like legitimately, if he's able to trot him out there, whether you want to say, okay, it's just the 3 snaps, or like, 7 snaps as we try to manufacture him 1 to 2 touches. He's been highly inefficient with them as is. Does he really do any better with those than Rice or Hardman would do with those couple snaps? Or are you going back to giving him 20, 25 snaps in which he maybe has 1 catch on and then 1 drop on? Is he doing any better than literally, like, he provides nothing for the offense. They don't miss him one bit not being in there. It's just, and that's it. It's sad to say. You could take out anybody else on this wide receiver group that's very bad and say they might miss them. I don't know if you can say that about Kadarius Toney this year. I just don't think there's a single thing that they're missing about him in his play this season.
Yeah. Kadarius Toney right now has 38 targets, 169 receiving yards. That is 6.3 yards per reception. For reference, he is behind Clyde Edwards-Helaire on receiving yards for the year. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has 20 targets for 179 yards. He's caught 16 of those, 11.2 yards per reception.
These plays
good
count.
for Clyde. Good for Clyde.
Yeah, right.
These plays count, but like I can think of 2 off the top of my head. There was like the like wheel route or fade or whatever coming out of the backfield that he caught this year, and then there was the slant where he like broke a tackle. And like those 2 right there combined for like 40 of his 100 and whatever yards. Like just those 2 catches, like they count, but just doing that much yardage on 2 of those catches, that means the rest accomplish that little.
Nothing.
That's rough.
Let's talk about the defensive side of the ball, because that's the more fun side of the football when it comes to some of these young guys, because there's a lot of them. Craig, who's the youngster you're most excited to get more reps this week?
I mean, I'll take the low-hanging fruit here. I'm going to go with Felix Anaduke Uzama.
That's pretty good.
I'm very curious to see what we get out of him. We saw a couple of flashes. We know he's got speed. We know he's got bend. We know he's got burst. I was never one of these guys that was like, this guy has to play this year. He absolutely has to play this year. As a matter of fact, I think after they drafted him, I said, if they give him a redshirt year, yeah, that's fine. I'm fine with that, especially with the depth chart the way that it is. Now he's going to get an opportunity to play. And I want to see what the growth looks like this year. I want to see, does he have like a Tim Ward final game where he goes out there and he just plays really well? Because if he does, guess what? You can get legitimately excited about the Chiefs' first-round draft pick and then, probably put him on the shelf again until, you get to 2024. But I do want to see how he's grown. I know that he put on a little bit more weight coming into Kansas City, and I want to see, is he holding up a little bit better against the run? He's gotten some of those snaps lately. Hasn't been great, but once again, he's barely getting in the game. He's barely getting into the flow of everything. So get him out there. Let him get used to the speed of the game. Let him get used to how tackles are trying to play him. If Rashawn Slater is going to end up playing this week, go for it. Let's see it. Let's see what he looks like against a top tackle. Let's see what sorts of things he's going to need to do, because he's going to face those in his career. This is actually probably the best case scenario, because they're going to rest a lot of their defensive ends. They're probably going to play him plenty, and he's going to get to go up against potentially a guy that is a top 5 to 10 left tackle in this league. So get him out there, get him those good reps. It's win-win for Felix right now. So go out there and see what you got.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's the lowest hanging fruit, the guy that everyone's the most excited to see. And this is a game where he should get the opportunities, right? And it's not so much about going out there and dominating. It's, do you see growth from when he was getting a little bit of playing time to start the year to now? Do you see that development happening? And whether or not he's dominant or not, do you see a more consistent pass rush plan? Do you see a guy that's timing the snaps a little bit better? Like, has he improved on some of the stuff that was clearly, maybe keeping him off the field to start the year or in the middle of the season once the Chiefs got healthy? For me, I'm going to go to the secondary with Shamari Connor. He's been getting more reps, as the years got on, especially because of the injury to Brian Cook. But I think this is a game where he's going to get even more. And we say Brian Cook's injured. We don't know when he's coming back, if he's coming back. That means that Connor until then is going to be your third safety. And while we like Mike Edwards and what he does, he is best also as a third safety, and that means you probably get a pretty heavy rotation of both those guys playing. Here, Connor has the opportunity to play more traditional safety reps. He's not going to be in the slot. He's not going to always be overhanging or blitzing or like lurking around. And not that he's been doing that the past month. They have been playing him as a safety, but you're just going to get more. You're going to get a bigger sample size. And there's been some ups and there's been some downs when doing so. I wouldn't say he looks super comfortable playing as like a deep safety all the time right now, but you also see the athleticism. You also see the click and the close. You see some of the ball skills pop up and spurt. So how does he look back there? I think the Chargers are going to let Easton Stick, try to sling the ball around a little bit, give Connor a chance to showcase what he has. And you feel a little bit better about Cook, about the Chiefs secondary if Cook's unable to go, if Connor puts on another strong showing. And that way, if Mike Edwards ever does start to become a little bit of a liability, you might have somewhere else you can turn. You might have a 3 safety nickel, a dime package that gets them all out there that can be super effective like it was earlier in the year when Edwards was in that role.
So for me, it's BJ Thompson. And, he's such an interesting prospect. He's on the older side, but he's a freak athlete who came in on a little bit on the slender side, who has slowly kind of been able to add muscle and mass to his frame. I'm just kind of fascinated to see what his growth and development is because he hasn't been active all season. We haven't seen him since the preseason. And he's a developmental pass rusher. He's a guy that I want to see what kind of density to his frame there is, because that's going to matter for his projection moving forward, especially considering time's running out on him to be able to put mass on his frame because he is on the older side as a prospect. And just what kind of development from there too, like what kind of physical development, but also, is he able to still get up the arc? Is he shown an ability to get up the arc and bend a corner and really keep that corner tight and not get washed up the arc, and what does he look like against the run? Just some of the basic stuff, because he definitely seemed like a project for the future. And, the optimistic side of him for this season was going to be, hey, maybe towards late in the year, there's an opportunity for him to be a situational pass rusher against some of these heavier footed edge rushers. And I don't think that's ultimately going to be what the case is for his, career or for his season projection when it comes to actually seeing time. Like, they're not saving him for the playoffs. It would have happened earlier in the season if it was going to happen this year, but that doesn't mean it still can't. This week's going to be a big indicator and going to help us kind of have an idea of what the outlook for BJ Thompson is for 2024 and whether or not he's going to be a guy that they really try to keep around for the future. Anybody else that you guys are really geeked out about? Anybody else that you really want to watch on the defensive side? I mean, there's a few. I mean, there's the defense has the youngsters. I mean, there's a lot of youngsters out there that could be playing this week.
Right. Yeah. I want to see what Neil Farrell brings to the table. He's been inactive for most of the year.
What happens if he's inactive again?
Oh my goodness. I don't want to think about that.
That's not going to happen. Like, that's not.
It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. So, like, he's going to be out there plenty. I think we're going to see plenty of Josh Williams and Jalen Watson, Echo Boydo, Nick Jones. Like, I just kind of want to see what the young corners look like with a little bit more play. I'm curious to see how much Drew Tranquill plays. We have talked plenty about this team. We've talked plenty about the way that they approach this linebacker core. I don't want to get into that discussion, but Brendan Daly talked about bringing something to him, this week, a little change of pace or something different this week. And Drew had basically already studied it. And so he was Brendan Daly's like, man, he's just a consummate professional. He's already out there. He's already doing this stuff. That makes it sound like Drew Tranquill is going to play. And based on his snap count in previous games, it would make sense because they clearly view him as a backup linebacker in this rotation. So if he's going to go out there, he's going to play the mic. He is going to give these young players the best opportunity to win. Because I'm not saying that Jack Cochran isn't going to go out there and be able to be effective as the mic linebacker. We've seen that at times this year that he's been fine. But Drew Tranquill is going to be able to go out there and tell Felix, tell BJ Thompson, tell Neil Farrell where they need to line up, why this is happening, where things are going. We've identified these things before. Help organize the coverage on the back end. He's going to give those young players that we're talking about here that we are hoping to see good games out of the mental advantage over some of these things. Plus, he's playing against a former team that I'm sure he wants to line up and show, oh, hey, yeah, I know that I'm kind of in a backup linebacker role here, but guess what? I'm still really damn good, and you shouldn't have let me go. So there is a lot on the plate for a Drew Tranquill this week, and I'm very curious to see, do they let him get plenty of run as the Mike linebacker to help everybody else, all these young guys on the defense, be at their best down in and down out?
I really hope he doesn't play a lot. I really hope that Drew Tranquill doesn't play a lot. I really hope that Willie Gay, Leo Chenal, Cochran, Cam Jones, I hope all these guys get out there and play a lot. And I hope Drew Tranquill doesn't. And that way we can finally have it settled that they have kind of been holding it back for the playoffs. And they're not treating him like this year's version of Darius Harris that is just there to be a backup Mike and play in certain packages. Because that would be so sad with what I think just the ultimate ceiling of this team can be in the playoffs. I'm looking through this Chiefs defense right now, right? And I'm trying to figure out who's not going to play and try to figure out who is what's that going to look like? Just who's not going to play in this game on the Chiefs defensive side of the ball? Because it was something that Kent said earlier. You only get 2 practice squad elevations. I think you can make a very easy case that they're both on the offensive side of the ball. So
I tell you, we already have the answer on one of them.
Exactly.
Chris Oladokin will be the backup quarterback for Blaine Gabbert in this game.
Right. And so you have to bring in, we already said, if you're going to have offensive linemen that aren't playing, if Donovan Smith can't play, just simply can't play, you probably at least already have to bring up somebody from the practice squad. There's both. Hey, guess what? Do you really want Isaiah Pacheco running again the way he does in this game? Clyde Edwards-Helaire missed last week. I know it was just an illness, and he's practiced all this week. It seems like he should play. But again, it doesn't seem like that's completely set given the illness has gone on multiple weeks now. LaMichael Pirines their only other running back that would be up. So if something pops up with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you have it's just that it seems like the call up has to be on the offensive side of the ball. So this defense, there's going to be some starters that got to play.
Yeah.
They don't have only backups. Is Chris Jones going to go out there hunting for some numbers?
No, Chris Jones hasn't practiced this week. I don't see him coming out there and doing it.
So George Karlaftis is still young, so he's probably going to play a little. Should he?
A little no. George. A little Noddy. I don't know about Dana.
I think Noddy plays. I think Turk Wharton might lead the defensive line in snaps this week. He really might. They don't have another 3-tech unless they're going to play Malik Herring there, which
Legarius isn't going to play.
Legarius is not playing. No.
Is Trent McDuffie going to play?
Mike Edwards is going to play.
That's true.
It's just what I mean. I just looking through it here. It's okay, the defense has to really pick and choose who's going to play because there's going to be guys that play that are 1 are starters, but 2, you're going to be asking guys like Tershawn Wharton, Mike Edwards, Shamari Connor, guys that play a real rotational role that you want to be healthy. You're going to ask them to play a full set of snaps. It's 90% of the snaps in this game. So it's interesting to me how they're going to figure that out because I don't feel like they have a ton of pure backups to just sit in there and play. And especially if you don't get any help from the practice squad for the defensive side of the ball, they have guys like Malik Herring sitting there. We mentioned Neil Farrell, BJ Thompson. They have guys that have been active that can eat snaps in some places. It's just, I think both call-ups have to be offensively.
Probably. Yeah. And so you're not going to get a generic Prince look probably. Cause you're right. I said earlier,
elevations too.
Is he really?
Yeah. They used him.
That's why they had to sign Pirine to the active rosters because he was out. Prince is out. They elevated Ingram last week. And I would, if Clyde Edwards-Helaire pops up at all for an illness again, if you see him pop up at all in the injury report, it might not get to be the offensive line.
That means one of your starters is playing in this game.
Trey Smith.
Yeah.
Probably Trey Smith. Yes.
Yeah.
Jawan Taylor, make him learn how to align. No, not really. We need him. No. We need him only listening to Pat's cadence. You cannot throw another cadence at Jawan Taylor.
Please. Oh, please. No, I think Justin Reed, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Nick Bolton, and Chris Jones are locks to not play this week. I think those 5 guys are definitely not playing.
I don't think you can go much more, though. That's my thing. Is I don't think you can go much more than that. Now, guys like George, Menahue, they'll play less reps, right? Mm-hmm. Let Mike Dana eat a bunch of reps. He's fine with that. You let Tershawn Wharton eat a bunch of reps. Like we mentioned, Herring, Farrell, Thompson, guys that are always inactive. I think you can make it. Deion Bush is also on the active roster. So there's a safety. You have guys, I think, that can fill in if you just take those 5 out. It's just, I think on the surface, we're all like, oh, none of the starters are going to play. No, they don't have.
That's not how the NFL works.
The starters to play. Yeah.
Well, even some of the benching, like even the times where I think they've rested some guys, like I think like Atuni has played, for a while, and so they've played some starters.
Don't play him.
If you can't.
I mean, you guys said Trey, but Trey Smith's the one offensive lineman that's been injured up and down this year.
I know that's the thing that threw it into. I was like, we said that, and I was thinking about that earlier, and I was like, maybe it's Creed. Maybe they don't. Maybe
Trey did not practice on Thursday with this illness that's clearly running around the building right now.
Maybe they let Creed play center for a good chunk of the game, and then let Gretty and Caliendo play the guards. I know. Yeah. I just don't know.
Or that's where your elevation is. It's just, we'll figure it out. We'll see. It's just, there's a lot that goes into it. It's not the most exciting thing to think about. As we were going through players we're excited to see, I'm like, wait, I don't think they can really sit as many guys defensively as we're going to hope with way the elevations have to work. That's all.
They're going to play a 4-3. It's going to be like base personnel the entire game, regardless of the personnel that the Chargers roll out. It's going to be Cochran, Cam Jones, and Leo Chenal.
Hear me out. Just IR Kadarius Toney and bring in somebody that plays.
I'm wondering if that's not going to be the case. I genuinely wonder. But again, that probably doesn't.
His season would be. He could theoretically come back for the Super Bowl should the Chiefs make it to that point.
Though.
I mean, yeah. There's a reason I feel comfortable even throwing it out there, knowing that he could not come back until the Super Bowl.
Donovan Smith might be a guy like that too after a full practice going to DMP, that if it's just not healing right, like again, they do have options. We will see, but yeah, I know.
I agree. Him, you want to be there. I'm just looking for other ways to get through this particular game, and like Kadarius Toney is the one, and I do find it rather interesting that he is all of a sudden not participating again.
I do want to say this though. These are the games that they get crazy, that they do stuff. Again, Colin Saunders played Mike linebacker for like a quarter and a half.
Because it was awesome.
It was great because they didn't have the depth. And that, I think this Chiefs team is fine. Andy Reid is fine with, hey, listen, if it starts to go south, we pick up a knock here and there. We're just going to pull that guy out and we're going to have to improvise. Maybe, all of a sudden, Shamari Connor's playing linebacker for this team or something like that. We'll see, but they rotate guys around, and they're fine with giving some of these young guys as close to like 85 or 90% of the snaps as possible, just because they're gonna use them up, and they don't really care about the results of the game.
We spent a lot of time doing players to watch this entirety of the game, or the show, but now it's time for players to watch. Presented by Tickets for Less. Promo code KCSN gets you the highest discount available on your Chiefs tickets at ticketsforless.com. Make sure you're taking advantage of that. Craig, of all the players we've talked about, who is the player you are most excited to watch in this game? Go.
Oh man, I think it's gonna be Richie James. We didn't mention him. He's gonna play. They don't really have a ton of options, especially if guys like MVS don't play this week. Kadarius Toney don't play this week. Rashee Rice hasn't practiced yet this week. Richie James might be in for some volume targets, and honestly, I'm fine with seeing more Richie James. I've liked the little taste that we've gotten here and there of his involvement in the offense. So why not trot him out there a little bit more with Blaine Gabbert? Why not try and diversify that route tree a little bit more, put more on defensive coordinators' plate? I'm cool with seeing more Richie James this week. I would love to have him have a big game.
We're going to go with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. We mentioned him in passing, but I think he's going to play. And since the Jerick McKinnon kind of injury, he's been the guy when healthy that has taken over kind of as the receiver. They've got him downfield a little bit. They've thrown him some screens in his last 3 games leading into, before he missed his previous one, 29 yards, 64 yards, 42 yards receiving. He had the jump and catch in the end zone for one of those games. Into the playoffs, they're going to need a third down back. And I know Isaiah Pacheco's coming off a game where he caught a lot of passes, including a really nice touchdown. But for the most part, Isaiah Pacheco is a safety net as a receiver, as a running back. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has flashed a little bit more, especially going back to LSU as being that kind of guy. So let's go ahead and put Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the guys to watch for this game, especially as a receiver coming out of the backfield.
two guys we haven't talked about that I am genuinely excited about, and if we had a long time to talk, I would have gone with Nick Jones and Echo Boydo. Both of those cornerbacks are probably going to get some run this week. Echo Boydo was a darling of training camp and put together a really strong performance. And so we're going to get to see, his development over the course of the year. And Nick Jones was a training camp, head turner because he was getting run in the slot for, the number one defense in football during training camp. He was getting some legitimate looks, him and Najee Johnson were kind of darlings of early camp, and then injuries kind of derailed some of that. So I'm just kind of interested to see what he looks like. If, he's probably going to have to play outside, but maybe they can kick him down into the slot a little bit where he was getting some run in training camp. Maddie, before we get out of here, you had some questions for us. Are they quick?
Yeah. And this is going to be pretty quick, but but next time we talk, this is going to be settled, right? This is already, we're going to know this. So I wanted to ask your guys' opinion. The wild card game time slots are afternoon Saturday, night Saturday. There's an early afternoon, night Sunday. Then there's a primetime night on Monday. The Chiefs, if they play the Dolphins, which time slot do they get?
Monday.
You think they're getting the island, they're all islands, but you think they get the Monday nighter?
Yeah.
On ESPN. You don't think they'd give them Sunday on NBC? You think they would do Monday?
I think
it's going to be one of those two. It will be the primetime Sunday or primetime Monday game.
Yeah. I'll be mad if it's the Monday. I'll be fuming if it's the Monday.
Okay. If they play let's say the Texans, that seems to be a very likely opportunity.
Saturday. That's a Saturday game if I've ever seen one.
Okay, but is it the early Saturday that they're trying to bury, or is it the night Saturday they say, hey, there's intrigue here?
Night Saturday in Arrowhead against the Texans. That makes
we all know the Browns are playing the day Saturday game.
Yeah, they are. Yes. Yeah.
Are you trying to bury Joe Flacco? He won't die.
We all know the NFC South winner is playing the day Saturday game.
It is one of those.
I mean, that would be the Texans. Oh, NFC South. Oh, sorry.
Yeah,
okay. Yeah, understood.
Probably.
I'll shut up.
That was all. That was just my questions. Which time slots we think they get. I agree. I think the Dolphins coming to Arrowhead is probably one of those two primetime games. The NFC will get one, the AFC will get the other. And then if it is the Texans or if it's the Colts, the Chiefs might be a candidate for that.
Texans, Colts, Steelers, that screams
That's a
Saturday night to me. Yeah.
Give me that extra day.
Bills.
Oh, that's back to the prime time.
Night. Yeah,
that's whoever's number one on the. I don't know how the NFL decides this, but whatever TV station has the first bid gets the Chiefs Bills. Honestly, the Chiefs Dolphins might go for a first bid too. I would have to look at all the matchups. I think there's going to be a really good NFC game in there too, given how that'll shake out. But that was my question: is where we thought they'd play.
Who do the Chiefs play? Who predict it now?
The Pittsburgh Steelers.
Pittsburgh Steelers. That might be a Friday. That might be a Saturday afternoon game. Mason Rudolph versus Patrick Mahomes.
They're still the NFC South, man. They still exist.
Mayfield. Okay. All right.
It's the Dolphins.
I think I'm going Dolphins. And
the Dolphins are missing both defensive ends and half their teams in a walking boot. They're not beating the Bills, I don't think. I don't think.
The Dolphins don't want to play anywhere else than Miami. So I think you're going to see Mike McDaniel pull out every stop that he can to try and get creative and win that one because they don't want to go on the road.
Well, and I'll tell you this too. You go Jags and go. It's Jaguars, and who's the other team that has to win to make things really interesting for the Bills?
Well, Steelers.
The Steelers.
Jaguars and Steelers. Yeah, go Jags, go Steelers. Those two things happen, then the Bills have to empty the clip to try to win that game too. Because they miss the playoffs if they lose.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And they know that going in as well. They know that going in. This is why, I get what you're saying, Craig, with the Dolphins wanting to play, only in Miami, but they have a lot of injuries. Jalen Waddle's not playing. I know Tua got hurt a little bit. They say he's fine, but he got dinged up. Tyreek Hill, again, I don't think he's on the injury report, but he was in a walking boot. The videos of him outside of his home that caught on fire, and thankfully everyone's okay with that. But he was in a boot. So that team's a little banged up. They make the playoffs no matter what. If they go into that night, and it's and especially they go in that night game, it's just I wonder if the there's a little bit of a quit factor if things don't start flowing real well, knowing that they still have life the following week is all.
Well, and I'll tell you, the Bills have to be riding on emotions and fumes right now too, because every game's been a playoff game. And so if they get put in a situation where they got to win that game on Sunday
How does that work with Josh Allen going through that emotional roller coaster? How's that worked? Just saying. It'll be fun. This is going to be an awesome football weekend. And the Chiefs don't matter at all. Don't factor in at all in it, other than the fact that we get to enjoy watching players that we don't normally get to play or get to watch play. It is the best football weekend of the year for Kansas City right now.
Let Turk Wharton get carries. That's going to do it for this episode of the KC Laboratory. Thank you all so much for listening, watching. We appreciate you. We'll catch you later.
Kadarius Toney, backup quarterback.
Tommy Townsend.